right, all right. All right, all right, all right. All right, all right, all right. Good even fall to one and all. Well, in fact, good even fall to one. To one, Mr. Vince Vargas. I hope you are doing well of health and sane of mind, my good friend. And anybody else that's going to join us for this here live tonight, which I hope to be rather brief, right? Because without a doubt, I am an individual that can go off on rants and soliloquies, and I am been accused of being a verbose. So I can go on and on. You guys told me when to stop. But I do hope that we are going to be addressing some of the bigger, more noteworthy news in the world of boxing, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we are also going to address something very important when it comes to men's health. I hope that you guys stick around until later on because I don't want to reveal that part right now. The information that I may relay later on regarding men's health is the type of information that somebody may want to record and use against me afterwards, right? But I'm not too afraid of speaking truth or on it being honest with regards to my health or health in general for the man, right? Because that's what the majority of our listeners are. We are all men, for the most part, that enjoy the same common things: organized violence, pugilism, bravery, love for our country, love of ourselves and of our families. Right. This is what we try to preach. This is what we try to promote in the Warp Speed Life at Warp Speed channel. And it should be rather brief, this live here, because we will not be having any guests tonight. Nobody wanted to hop on this here live. The homie Ricky, which is my fellow co-broadcaster, and my younger sibling, he is unavailable. And Dream123 is also not responding to my messages with regards to going live tonight. So it's just going to be me trying to hold it down. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm free for anything. You guys have any questions? You guys want to address anything in particular? Let me know. I have been watching boxing. I am not too highly opinionated. I always try to find a common ground with respect to our fighters and the politics of the sport. So I won't be too harsh on any of our fighters or too harsh on any of these organizations or the moving parts of this year's sport. But we will have to address some rather serious things tonight. Mr. Vince Vargas could even fall to you. He states, still pumped about the Mexico City top rank presser. Let me see. I'm not too sure why I can't read it. Still pumped about the Mexico City top rank presser with Elvino, Rafael Espinosa, and Emiliano Vargas, El General. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, Mr. Vargas. I'm not too sure what's going on. This StreamYard thing, right? It looks like they've changed everything, like the whole format of it, the platform. It's very strange, and it's not easy for me to either comment or bring up the messages on the screen. Let me see if I could put a little. It says here, star comment, share your referral link, and this is ridiculous. Okay, right. Share my referral link. Delete comment, put user in timeout, ban user. What? I'm not trying to do any of that. All right. Whatever. This is a ridiculous stream platform. Anyways, yeah, that was a very that's very interesting. I when I first saw that, Mr. Vargas, I thought that El Divino was gonna fight Emiliano, and I was like, what's going on here? Why are these guys next to each other, raising their arms like if they're gonna fight? They're in different divisions. Believe it or not, we have Emiliano Vargas at 140, Rafael Divino at 126, but they were right next to each other with their shirt off, showing off their muscles, and I thought they were gonna fight each other, and it was just crazy. I didn't have an opportunity to catch that presser, but I know that that's gonna be very exciting for the Mexicans to see one of their champion, and of course a Mexican American champion, going to visit him, one of the Vargas children, the progeny of Fernando, of course, visiting the land of the Aztecs. So yeah, I'm sure that he's enjoying the time of his life, getting reunited with his roots. Yeah, those gentlemen right there, they're great fighters, they're great gentlemen, and I wish them nothing but the best. They've always entertained me, and that's really what we're all about in this here channel, about the entertainment and the respect for our fighters and the sport. What do you want? The charger for what? Now, why don't you read a book first? Give me 10 minutes, and then that's my son, guys. He's trying to fight. He's trying to fight me for the charger. Um, all right, I'll give you 5 minutes with the charger, bro. Here, he's gonna be pitching tomorrow for his local little league team, so we'll see how that goes. He's done pretty well, but he's a little small in comparison to the other children that play in this sport, right? So he has to work way harder. And that's one of the reasons why we have not gone live more often, myself included. I have been involved much more in the lives of my children. I've been going to practice with them as a team, or just my daughter and myself pitching, hitting grounders, pop flies, just getting them ready for these games. So I've been very, very busy, and we've been also busy at work. Along with that, I've been suffering from these horrible allergies. Which, by the way, this is my second day that I'm doing rather well when it comes to the control of my histamines. So I'm very, very happy today. I have not sneezed, my eyes have not turned red, I have not hawked any kind of loogies, so I'm doing great. And I hope you are also, right? Mr. Vince Vargas says, "Is your son a righty or a lefty pitcher?" He's a righty. He's uh he's a righty, Mr. Vargas. Um, he's very fit, but he's short in stature in comparison to the other kids. So it's just one of those things, right? I mean, there's this kid that's, I don't know, 5'10". He's 11 years old, 5'10", probably like 170 pounds, right? And he's 11 years old. And there's no complaining, right? You can't be, any of these parents can't be like, oh man, that's a grown man, you can't be playing. Nope, that's genetics, right? This is the reality of anything in life, right? There's going to be people that are bigger, taller, shorter, smarter, stronger than the next guy. And it doesn't matter. If you're to compete with that individual, you're going to have to figure out how to beat him, resolve him, figure him out, right? So, yeah, my son is short, but he's also quick, and he's also very athletic. So he makes up for his shortcomings, at least physically, in comparison to the other children, by just working harder and using his athleticism, right? But you know what they say, right? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. The harder and more experienced they are, the better you get as a result. So hopefully that's rubbing off on this guy. Mr. Vince Vargas says, I'm short too. Yeah, well, you know what? It's not a bad thing to be short, Vince, right? You can fit in the smaller places. You probably have great dexterity and nimbleness of your body. There's a lot of good things and traits for the short individual, right? Um, the only thing I would say, right, is let's say that you're 5'8". If you're like me, you're not gonna go out with somebody that's much taller than you, right? It just looks very disparate. It just looks very funny, right? So the way I see it is, if I'm 5'8", anything from 5'8" below, it's all dibs, right? I can take it. But if it's like 5'9", 6 feet, I'm not even looking at that woman. I'm just like, okay, whatever. I have no chance. And even if I had a chance, I'm not gonna go for it, right? Because I'm not gonna be going out with a woman that's head and shoulders taller than me, right? So yeah, that's the problem with being short, Vince. That that I guess if you're like me, you limit your 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 opportunity set, love and relationships and whatnot. But it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be short. Women like short men. In fact, a lot of girls like tall guys. I'm 5'3", 5'4", I think. Yeah. So the reason girls like tall guys, Vince, is because they can't see it. It's the angle, right? It's the angle. It's they can't really see whether they're very handsome or not because the angle when they're sitting next to him, they just see like their chin and their nostrils, but they can't really see eye to eye, right? So because they can't see eye to eye, you can't really tell the dimensions of the individual correctly. So you're just looking at the dimensions from what you see, uh, but you could be the ugliest individual, but from that angle, short looking up, you may not see that ugliness, right? And the other thing that I've noticed about tall individuals is that they do think they are God's gift to women. And because of that, they have an arrogance and the pride that is unbecoming of a man, right? The humility, the humbleness, the the handsomeness is replaced by pride and beauty and vanity, and those aren't traits for a man. In fact, if a man is too, let's say the word pretty and vain, I don't trust him at being able to work hard, right? I don't trust them that that they're men that can get down and dirty and really, get the job done when it needs to because they're pretty. They think of themselves as pretty. They don't like to get themselves dirty. And if you're not a man that knows how to get yourself dirty and work, you're an inferior man, right? If you're tall, you should be able to work harder than me. And that's not usually the case, right? I don't know where we're going with this. Oh man, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I did want to talk about something very, very important, guys, and this is the email championship of one David Benavides. And I should say that tonight's live will start and end in the Dominican Republic, and I will explain why. Right. About a month and a half ago, you may recall, a lot of the World Boxing Championship (WBC) champions were posting on their Instagram and their TikTok and their X accounts or whatnot. They were posting that they were very, very proud to represent the WBC as champions. And one of those individuals was none other than the Dominican Republic's Carlos Adames. Yes, the 160-pounder, the middleweight. He posted that he was proud to be a champion for the WBC. But he was not the only one. There was a couple of other fighters that are champions and belt holders for the WBC that similarly, around the same time, they all started posting, I am proud to be a WBC champion. And I believe that included some female fighters like Amanda Serrano or otherwise, right? And a lot of people found that to be strange. Why all of a sudden all of these WBC champs were sending out messages saying the same thing and almost using the same exact words. And then it dawned on a lot of people that the reason why all of these WBC champions were saying the same thing at the same time was because the WBC's president Mexico's Mauricio Suleiman had asked him to. And you're probably asking, why? Well, recall that about a month and a half ago, around that same time right there was an announcement for an upcoming fight between Canelo Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan and William Skull, right? They were announcing that they were going to be fighting for WBC, WBA, IBF, all of these organizations belts for undisputed defense. Well, actually, not an undisputed fight, in fact, because the IBF belt was actually granted to William Skull. And as Canelo was walking up to the podium, right, there was one belt that was missing, and that was the WBC. And I think Canelo waved over to the person that was holding this WBC belt, like saying, "Hey, can you bring me the belt?" And Turkey says, "Don't worry about it. Don't, no, leave the belt behind." Right? And everybody's like, "What? Leave the belt behind? I mean, it looks much better when, two fighters are holding up four belts instead of three, right?" But for whatever reason or another, Turkey Ali Sheikh, His Excellency, he told Canelo, "Leave that belt over there. Don't worry about it." And Canelo said, "All right, then I'll leave it over there." And everybody started to speculate. Why did Turkey Ali Sheikh offend the reputation of the WBC belt? And I think we now know why. The WBC had been wanting to be the next in line for these fighters to go up and fight for their belt, right? Actually, you know what? I'm mistaken. It wasn't Canelo and William Skull. It was Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, if I'm not mistaken. Artur Beterbiev, Dmitry Bivol. Nonetheless, it doesn't really matter which fighter it was because I'm old and I have a bad memory. What matters is that the WBC's belt was being pulled to the side and ignored by Turkey Ali Sheikh. And the reason for that, it seems, is because Turkey Ali Sheikh and Mauricio Suleiman were not seeing eye to eye. So Turkey Ali Sheikh was trying to get this three-way fight, the third rematch between Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, and the WBC did not want that fight to happen. Right? They wanted their opportunity for one of their fighters, in this case, David Benavides, to fight the undisputed champion after the second go-ahead, right? And Turkey Ali Sheikh didn't care about that because he said, "Look, I have the money. The whole world wants to see who is the best. One guy took one fight, the other guy took the other fight. We need to see three fights in order to determine who the best fighter at 175 is. And I don't care what you say. I don't care about your belt. We, in fact, don't need it." So when this guy that's holding the WBC belt, trying to give it over there to Beterbiev, he tells him, "Leave it behind." He was intentionally rubbing it in the face of Mauricio Suleiman and WBC, saying, "We don't need this belt." So in response, Mauricio Suleiman tells all these champions, "Please post that you're a proud champion." And of course, Carlos Adames did the same thing. Now, the WBC has granted David Benavides championship via email, right? He didn't have to fight for it. He didn't have to be number two, fighting number three, number four, number five for a belt. The belt become vacant. Why? Because the WBC stripped Dmitry Bivol, because Dmitry Bivol decided to go and fight a third fight with Artur Beterbiev, right? But instead of forcing the number one and number two defending mandatory fighters for Bivol, instead of mandating those guys to fight to determine who comes out on top for the WBC belt. All they did is just grant it to David Benavides, a guy who just barely hit 175, who wasn't even undisputed at 168, who wasn't even holding a belt at 168 when he moved up to light heavyweight. He just basically went and fought some guy that he looked mediocre in. He fought a guy that was 168 with less than 10 fights, right? In Morrell, David Morrell. He beats that guy that's so inexperienced, and all of a sudden, this guy gets to become a champion. In fact, forget the champion. He became a mandatory for Bivol with 2 fights in. Wow, right? You have to ask yourself, is David Benavides that dominant? Is he so good? Is his resume so chock full of fighters that he has to skip the line of ranking at 175 for the WBC sanctioning bodies in order to get Bivol? You have to ask yourself that question, right? And you also have to ask yourself, is Bivol ducking David Benavides? You have to ask yourself, is David Benavides supposed to be champion at 175? You have to ask yourself, is Turkey Al Sheikh more powerful than the sanctioning bodies? Right? Is he a good force for the sport? Or is he now demonstrating the corruptibility that money it has over the sport, the influence that unchecked money has in this year's sport? Right? There's so many questions we have to address. The homie Ricky hops on the comment and he says, what is he? Let me see. Man, you guys are chatty tonight. Let me see. Vince says, can't be bought. Just kidding. Hell yeah, Vince. It's homie Ricky. What is Canelo's next fight? During the top rank press conference, they mentioned Canelo wasn't fighting Cinco de Mayo weekend or not even in the country. Top rank proposed that they want to showcase. Well, the last thing that I knew was that it wasn't the Cinco de Mayo weekend. In fact, there was going to be on Cinco de Mayo weekend, Naoya Inoue and Rafael Divino Espinosa fighting in Las Vegas, right? This is going to be the fourth visit of the Japanese legend coming over here to the United States. The same weekend, 2 days before that, there was going to be that fight that was going to take place in Times Square in New York between Rolly Romero and Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney and say Ramirez and all them cats, right? And Canelo was supposed to be fighting William Skull that day, but he's supposed to be fighting over there in Saudi Arabia. So it's not in the States, but it is supposed to be over there. As far as I'm concerned, I think that's still the plan, unless there has been some last minute changes. But it should be that same weekend. It should be an incredible weekend of fights in May. Let me see. The Mexican fighter Steven Emiliano was mentioned. Yep. Oh wow. I thought Canelo was fighting on Saudi Arabia versus Williams in the weekend of Cinco de Mayo. So do I, homie Ricky. But the schedule might have changed. Maybe. Turkey is bigger. Let me see. Turkey is bigger than sanctioning bodies and more powerful indeed. Yeah. So that I think that's obvious, right, homie Ricky? Because the sport revolves around money. It really has. It's always been like that, right? The reason why it's been so corruptible and it's the most gambled upon sport is because it is all surrounding money and revolving around money, right? Fighters fight for the prize, money, sometimes more so than the belts and legacy or fame, right? Some of us only follow the sport because of the gambling. Some fighters duck fights because of money. Some fighters quit the sport because they don't have enough money. So yeah, without a doubt, this is a sport that revolves around money. And who's got the most money? Who's got the deepest pockets? Of course, His Excellency Turkey Al Sheikh. Dream says, I'll be right there. All right, all right. So, Carlos Adames, on his birthday, he became email champion. But Mauricio Suleiman, on his birthday, told him, with regards to Jermel Charlo, who has not fought for our belt in 3 years, on your birthday, you have now been ascended to champion. Right. Now you got to understand one thing. That's a nice little gift, right? On his birthday, Mauricio Suleiman says, "Hey, Adames, how you doing? Happy birthday! Here, I got you the best thing for your career: a 160-pound championship belt. Yes, sirree, brother. You are now the champion at 160 for our organization. Do what you will with that." PBC won, right? All of a sudden, they have a belt on their hands. Carlos Adames did not have to fight anybody. He just granted it because another PBC fighter just stopped fighting for their organization for 3 years. The elder Charlo became a depressed individual that wrecked his Ferrari, had problems with his wife, went to jail. The WBC had to see all of that right there in order for them to say, hey, I don't think you're ever coming back to fight for a belt, right? Nonetheless, they decided to give the belt to Adames. Now, say what you will of that. The one thing that I say is this, guys. They should never have granted Adames a belt without a fight. Number one in line versus number two in line. Mandatory fighters, top five fighters or whatever. They should have paired the next two guys in line and had them fight to see who came out on top. But no, Mauricio just handed a belt off. And here's the thing, right? When you just give away belts, you cheapen the value of that belt, right? In other words, it's so easy to get a belt that all you have to do is just hold on. You don't have to fight. And if you're fortunate enough or you have political connections swollen enough, you can become a champion on the cheap. You don't have to give punches. You don't have to take punches. You can just wait there, and your promoter or your manager can just slip a brown bag or just maybe even cheaper than that. Maybe just a pat in the back, like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing, Mauricio?" And you become a champion. Ridiculous, right? But you can't really blame the fighter, right? You can't be too harsh on Carlos Adames and say, "Man, you're an email champ." Why? Because it's not his fault. He didn't go to Mauricio and say, "Hey, give me the belt." And even if he had said that, Mauricio's job is to be like, "Nah, bro, you have to fight for it." Right? And Carlos Adames is not going to be a fool and say, "Hey, I don't want the belt," because that would be ridiculous, right? Being a champion puts you in the books. Being a champion means you're going to have fights that will go 12 rounds. And because of 12-round fights, now you're getting paid more. A championship fight pays better than any other type of fight, right? So Carlos Adames is going to just do what benefits him and say, "Hey, I'm going to accept your belt. Thank you very much," right? But it's not fair. It's not fair. And it cheapens the belts when things like that happen. Now, it happened once again with David Benavides. Now, this is a little more complicated, right, guys? Because, see, in handing David Benavides the belt, the WBC, in essence, has tried to force Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol to not undertake a third fight for the undisputed defense. And see, that's the interesting part, right? Because for all intents and purposes, I agree with that. I agree with the WBC. I don't think there should be a third fight between these guys because we've already seen them twice. In fact, I don't even think there should have been a second fight. There should have been only one fight, guys. It should have been Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol fighting one time for all the belts, and whoever came out on top is the best fighter in the world. What does that mean? Artur Beterbiev is undisputed fighter, the best fighter in the world, no ifs, ands, or buts, and that's it. The chicanery comes into play when Top Rank and Eddie Hearn agree for an immediate rematch clause. That's horrible, guys. There should never have been an immediate rematch clause. As soon as Bivol lost, it was the job of Artur Beterbiev to defend against the number one fighter and the next sanctioning body who was next in line. And the order is this: the WBA is first, followed by the WBC, then the WBO, and then it's with the IBF, right? Now, the next in line, because of the order of the fights that they met up on, was the IBF, right? So as soon as Bivol lost, Beterbiev should have fought the number one mandatory for the IBF for all four belts, and that didn't happen because all of a sudden these guys had agreed on the rematch clause that they were gonna do another go at it, right? And I don't think that's fair, guys, because that holds up the belts. That means the WBA has a fighter that's waiting for his opportunity to become a champion and or undisputed and to get the best pay for fighting for all four belts, right? The WBC is going to be waiting in line, and even the WBO is going to be waiting in line. So the WBA had their opportunity next, right? The IBF was next. The WBA, they forfeited their opportunity. And then it was going to be the WBC. But it's crazy, guys, because here's the thing, though. The one organization that fought first was the WBO, right? It was the WBC, the WBO, the IBF is the one that is supposed to decide right now if these guys should have a three repeat fight, right? So why did Mauricio Suleiman try to force a fight now when they're not next in line? In fact, they're skipping right through the IBF, right through the WBA, who are the next two organizations in line. And WBC is saying you have to defend against David Benavides people, or we strip you of that belt, which is exactly what happened. They stripped him of his belt a couple of days ago when Dmitry Bivol's attorney said, we're not going to be defending. We have an obligation. We have a contract to rematch Artur Beterbiev. It's just our bond. Word is bond, and we're going to be fighting them. So do what you will with your belts. And in retaliation, the WBC said it will strip you and we will hand this belt to the next in line, which is going to be David Benavides. But again, I tell you, they were not next in order of defense. It was the IBF and the WBA. Now, here's the thing about the IBF, guys. The IBF doesn't even matter. Why? Because the IBF does not ever grant any leniency for any undisputed fights to take place and skip their mandatory. In fact, the IBF and rematch clauses indicate that the IBF does not recognize rematch clauses as an exception to a mandatory defense. That means that the IBF, their job was not to allow a third fight. The IBF's job was to strip Bivol anyways, but they never got there. Why? Because the IBF was actually gonna allow for a three-peat. You see what I'm saying? This is the corruption of the sport, guys. The IBF has a bylaw that does not recognize rematch clauses as an exception to a mandatory defense. That means that their fighter, the next in line for the IBF, was supposed to be fighting Dmitry Bivol. Let's think about that, right? That's incredible. And remember the history of the IBF. The IBF was investigated by the FBI and I believe by Mr. Bob Arum. They were reprimanded, suspended. I think the president went to jail of the IBF. They had to rewrite their laws and bylaws. Then it became the strictest organization of all. Why was the IBF going to allow that to take place? Why were they gonna skip Michael Eifert, Connor Wallace, Albert Ramirez, or Anthony Yard from fighting Dimitri Bivol for their belts? Right? You're probably asking yourself, well, who is Michael Eifert? Who is Connor Wallace? Who is Albert Ramirez? Who is Anthony Yard? It doesn't matter. Those guys are the guys who've climbed up the ranks, paid their dues and fees in order to have their shot at the belt. The IBF's job was supposed to strip Dimitri Bivol anyways, but they were going to allow it. So let's just say that they allowed it. The next in line was supposed to be the WBA. They never got there because the WBC just stripped them. Stripped Bivol. Now, make of that what you will, guys. Make of that what you will. The WBC is trying to force these guys to not have a repeat and trying to force Bivol to fight David Benavides. I want that fight. I think that's the best fight, right? Because I don't want to see a better Bivol fight again. They're not fun enough. They're not competitive enough. And as far as I'm concerned, the best fighter in the world was Artur Beterbiev once he beat Bivol the first time. In fact, the immediate rematch clause is the most corruptible thing that has happened in the sport because it holds up the belts. It makes all these organizations take a step back where they should adhere to their laws. And you know who is responsible this time around for the immediate rematch clause? Turkey Al Sheikh. Turkey Al Sheikh has corrupted this sport, this division, twice so far. And he has done it again. And in retaliation, we are now having a WBC strip a champion, making this next fight even less enticing because Bivol and Beterbiev will no longer be a fight for undisputed. So why even go through with it? Right? Why even go through with it? If Bivol beats Beterbiev or Beterbiev beats Bivol, it doesn't matter anymore because it's not to determine between three fights who the best fighter in the world is because not all four belts are there, right? So why are they doing it? Familiarity, the fact that they know each other, the fact that Turkey pays the most. But what does that do for us? Nothing. Those fights ain't fun enough. Those fights ain't fresh enough. The fights we want to see involve fighters that have been waiting their chance, right? I would rather see Bivol fight Benavides any day. Let me see what Dream says, but it's 1-1. Job's not done yet, Kobe. Bivol and Beterbiev going to continue to win. Like cream rising to the top unless someone moves up. Benavides, the obtainer of the year. Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, absolutely, right? I don't know, guys. Listen, I think Bivol and I think Beterbiev are excellent fighters. But it's simple, right? Turkey Ali Sheikh should make the best fights happen, but he shouldn't try to meddle too much into the organizations or the order of things when it comes to the sanctioning bodies. These organizations have been around for a very long time. They make history. They make champions. They allow fighters to leave a legacy of greatness in the world. And Turkey Ali Sheikh, the only thing that he's starting to do now is to make the sport great, only in the sense that he's able to pay the best to make the best, most interesting, and hardest fights to make happen. I love that about him. But I don't think this fight required three rematches in a row. Ridiculous. I never heard of that. That is stalling the division. And I don't care if you think the two best fighters in the world are only those two guys. We'll never know if they just keep fighting between themselves. You're always going to be one guy going back, the next guy going back. Infinitum. We need to see the next guys in line. And Turkey Ali Sheikh has corrupted. He has compromised his organizations. And now the WBC has stripped a fighter in retaliation. And I don't think anybody is happy about it all, right? I don't think David Benavides is happy about it at all, right? But he's also not going to be unhappy. He became a champion on the cheap, right? And let's think about it. Let me put it to you like this, guys. This is embarrassing. With the WBC making David Benavides the champion for their organization on account that Dimitri Bivol chose not to fight him and preferred to fight a guy he's fought twice before, that in essence, for all intents and purposes, makes David Benavides a fighter that has made it two undisputed fighters duck him. Yes, Dimitri Bivol is an undisputed fighter that ducked David Benavides, and Canelo Alvarez is another fighter that has ducked that David Benavides smoke. Literally, the Mexican monster, guys. The boogeyman. A guy that really hasn't done nothing in the past few years, right? He hasn't been a champion. He hasn't looked too dominant. I mean, he looks very, very capable. Very, very good. Very exciting fighter, right? But nothing in his record, nothing in his resume should say, man, Canelo has to duck this guy. And it makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense for Canelo to duck this guy. It doesn't make sense that Bivol ducks this guy. You're like, how is it gonna be ducking when Canelo's fighting bigger guys? When he moved up to 175 to fight Bivol, to, why would he be? Why would that be called the ducking? If Bivol is obviously a bigger, harder threat than David Benavides, why would it be called ducking if Artur Beterbiev is a bigger, harder threat than David Benavides? But what else do you call that? Creative matchmaking, right? Oh, they're chasing the bag. What do you care? Do you care about these men making the most money? Or are you here for the entertainment? Your own selfish entertainment. I'm here for the entertainment, guys, right? As a fan, I want to see the best fights out there. I already seen Beterbiev people. They're all right. High stakes, high caliber fighting. Good stuff. But were they particularly violent? No. Was there bloodshed? No. Was there knockouts? No. Was there any memorable moments, guys? There wasn't. Right? There was no memorable moments. In fact, the fights were so close fought that in two fights, nobody was too dominant. So why do we want to see a third fight? Now you're not gonna be too harsh on people, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, David Benavides is a big threat that doesn't pay much in comparison to Beterbiev. Beterbiev is a fighter that Bivol already knows he can survive, and he already knows that he's going to get paid the most. So, high threat, low reward, David Benavides versus regular threat, high reward, Artur Beterbiev. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. So, Bivol wants Beterbiev more than he wants David. Now we could go and talk about the rumors, right? Oh, David Benavides stopped Bivol in sparring. He hit him to the liver, and then Bivol took a knee and he called it quits. Or you can go with the other rumor, right? The one that was being spread on Joe Rogan's podcast, where that trainer, that big old lying trainer, said, "Oh yeah, one of the biggest punches I've ever seen was Bivol knock down David Benavides with a jab." Do you believe that, guys? Bivol knocked down David Benavides in sparring with a jab. Right? This is our sport. And unfortunately, I can't be happy at this moment, right? We're seeing a third fight, which we've seen before, that is only holding up the belts, that has never lived up too much to the hype. Fighters are being granted belts on the cheap instead of forcing them to fight between one and two. These fighters are taking the big money over the legacy. And I think that's going to be the direction of the sport going forward, guys. So that's all right, right? I mean, get that money. But we want to see money and smoke. That's really what we want to see. Man, what a week. And speaking of the Dominican Republic, right? We did say that we were going to start it off by speaking about the Dominican Republic, and we're going to end it speaking about the Dominican Republic. As you may have heard, this Monday there was a tragedy, mishap. I believe it was in Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic. A merengue singer by the name of Ruby Perez. He was surrounded by a bunch of loving fans, former baseball players, governors of the Dominican Republic, and all kinds of stuff. Everybody was just gathered on a Monday, enjoying the very good, lively music. You know, the merengue, which is very similar to salsa, sorta, right? It's very dancey, and they play a lot of the same instruments, uh, marimbas, trumpets, and congas and whatnot. And as these beautiful ladies and beautiful men and men of renown, they're enjoying life. The singer presenting them with entertainment and beautiful songs. All of a sudden, a piece of an awning from the venue that they were in this concert in, it fell down. And all these people are recording, right? And then something falls in the background. And then somebody screams like, "Hey, something just fell." But everybody continues on. And everybody's still looking like, what was that, right? Why did that fall? It looked like part of the roof fell. But of course, everybody continues on, and there's a lot of people in the forefront of this venue, and the ones that are being concerned are the ones in the foreground. But Ruby Perez, he has a job to do, so he's singing, and his musicians and his dancers, very beautiful, nice-legged ladies. They were in the background. They sing their merengue, which is a two-step where they move their hips and whatnot. It's fun music, fun music. And as Ruby Perez is singing, all of a sudden the roof starts caving in on them, and all hell breaks loose. And everybody that's recording, you know, they start getting startled, and then all of a sudden, all you see of the visuals from the camera of their phones is just turning black, and everything is moving left and right, and it just becomes a very dizzying array of images. Right, the roof on this venue in the Dominican Republic collapsed on these guys, killing the musician, killing a former baseball player. I think he played for the Boston Red Sox, killing a governor, and nearly 100 other people. Yeah. For the people that are suffering through this tragedy, that have survived this event, or they're survivors in general of some of the casualties, we pray for you. We pray that they have met their maker, and that they have lived good lives, so that they may be rewarded in the afterlife with a better opportunity. But why do we fool ourselves, right? Imagine there you are 1 second of your life dancing punta or merengue or whatever with a very beautiful lady. Short skirts, beautiful legs, having fun, laughing, falling in love, and then the roof falls on you, crushes you, breaks you, and strips you of life. I I pray for you guys, and I hope that the deceased will rest in peace. Eddie Meddy, look at you. Hey, guys and girls. Hey. Well, there you go, man. Thank you very much for joining us in this here live. Canelo fighting early morning in Saudi Arabia, so it can be nighttime in the U.S. for us. Thanks, King Canelo. Yeah, that's a good thing. If you guys have never caught a Saudi fight, yeah, you're probably gonna watch Canelo fighting like around 2:30 in the afternoon, right? So get yourself ready, right? Don't think you're gonna gather around in the barbecue 6 o'clock in the afternoon in the Pacific, or maybe 9 o'clock over there Eastern. No, guys. You have to wake up nice and shine real early. The prelims start like around 8:30 in the morning. The main event starts around 11 Pacific. Not too sure what part of the world you're in. And the Central Time, we're talking about, I don't know, like around 1 p.m. But yeah, the event is gonna be in the daytime, guys. So remember, it's not taking place in the U.S. Now, Oya Inoue is fighting the Tom Brink in Las Vegas in the U.S., and so is Romero and Garcia and Ramirez and Haney and them cats. But it's going to be a heck of a week right there. Now, Emiliano Rafael fighting Monday night. What? That's on a Monday? Are you sure, Ari? That's on a Monday. Wow. What is up with all these people trying to have these huge events on a Monday? The tragedy that I told you about, Ruby Perez, that was a concert that took place on a Monday. Ladies and gentlemen, what? Monday is one of those days that everybody is miserable in because they just enjoyed their weekend, and all of a sudden they have to go back to their dreadful jobs with their hateful bosses, and people still have the energy to go out there and dance and fight and show up to a venue on a Monday. I don't know what the world is coming to. Yeah, they got roofied. Oh, oh, they got roofied because the roof fell on him. Man, Eddie, you're a genius with that comedy, bro. Nah, let me see. Nah, he's fighting 10 a.m. Saudi time, so it's 9. Huh? What do you mean? What? 10 a.m. Saudi time, so it's 9 p.m. here? Are you sure it's not 9 p.m. Saudi time, 10 a.m. here? Oh man, I don't know. I don't know. Um, but yeah, El Pachuco good even for you. I think I saw Pachuco says saludos, man. I didn't receive a notification. Yeah, so El Pachuco, thank you very much for at least coming over here and listening to us for a little bit. So I don't think I'm doing a very good job in notifying for the most part, right? Most of the time, whenever I want to go live, I post in the community. And if you're one of those type of followers that actually subscribes to all types of notifications from the Warp Speed channel, well, then you're gonna get that, right? You're gonna get that notification. But it was late today. I think I hopped on like closer to 9:30 at night, and I was just gonna go live by myself because the homie Ricky and Dream they never responded, right? So I said, okay, let me address the topic that you brought up to my attention, right? Which is basically there should never be a thing as an email champion. Top, next in line, second, third, fourth, and fifth, whoever it is at the top of the division for a belt. When there's a vacancy, those guys should fight for the belt. No one should be granted a belt on the cheap like that. It cheapens the value of the championship of the sanctioning body that hands out these belts. It favors the more politically connected. In this case, David Benavides and even the former champion that we've talked about, Carlos Adames. All of these guys became champions on the cheap. They didn't have to fight anybody to become champions. And in the question of David Benavides, literally, we're talking about a guy that just barely moved up to 175, looked very mediocre in his very first fight against a guy that's a 38-year-old fighter, and he beat a guy that has about 10 fights, and David Morrell. I don't see how any of those fights right there get him even top 10 ranked for the WBC, much less become a champion, right? So yeah, I agree with you, Pachuco. David Benavides should have fought the next in line. And we already gave out the names for the WBC, the guys in line, and they would have made for some pretty interesting matchups, right? And I'm not even saying that David Benavides would not have overcome those challenges to become a belt holder. Um, he likely would have become a belt holder anyways, right? But was it too hard for the WBC to mandate David Benavides to fight, I don't know, Joshua Buatsi or Alexander Vosdik? I mean, David Benavides already beat David Morrell, and David Morrell is ranked two. Number one is Artur Beterbiev, right? What the? That's so crazy. Like, Artur Beterbiev is number one even after he lost to Bivol. That's ridiculous. Like, I would have loved to see David Benavides versus Joshua Buatsi, but the rumors are that David Benavides is likely going to fight somebody like Callum Smith. All right. The funny thing is, Callum Smith ain't even ranked in the WBC, in the top 15 WBC. So it's crazy, man. But it gets worse, of course, Pachuco, because now we have a fight, a three-peat between Bivol and Beterbiev, which is no longer for undisputed. So that means that Artur Beterbiev just got screwed, right? He got screwed with an opportunity to become the best fighter in the world. Now, you can argue and say, yeah, well, you know what? Technically, they never lost their belts. So, people never lost his belt. So he's still undisputed. And when they repeat again for a third time, it really should be not only for Undisputed, it's definitely going to be for Lineal. But guess what? In the history books, it's not going to come out like that. Nobody's going to read the little addendums, right? That say in tiny print. Oh yeah, and by the way, well technically this guy never lost, so it should have been for Undisputed, but the WBC handed David Benavides a belt. They're never gonna read that. They're just gonna know that the third fight took place between these guys, and one guy came with three belts, and the other guy had no belts, and there was another guy that had one belt. That's what it's gonna read, right? And nobody's gonna read the fact that that the WBC wasn't even next in line to have their fighters mandated for a fight. It was the IBF. And nobody's going to talk about how the IBF does not have any leniency to forego their mandatory fighters. Right? The IBF does not honor automatic rematch clauses. They don't recognize rematch clauses as an exception to mandatory defenses. So, again, the IBF was supposed to strip Bivol anyways. But instead of them doing their job, they were going to allow a three-peat to take place. And whose job was it to make sure that somebody did the right thing? Was the WBC. And why did the WBC do the right thing? Only because they were trying to get back at Turkey Al Sheikh. Turkey Al Sheikh and TKO Promotions, ignoring the importance of the WBC belt, forcing Mauricio Suleiman to tell all of his WBC champions to post on their Instagram, X accounts, and whatnot, saying how they were proud to fight for the WBC as champions. Ridiculous, guys. It's these grown 50, 60-year-old men that are tarnishing the sport, cheapening it overall. And what are we, the fans, stuck with? Another boring B-ball and Vitervia fight. Really boring, guys. I want you to tell me what memorable moments were there in those fights? We've had two so far. Was there any memorable moments? Were they particularly violent? Was there lots of bloodshed? Was there knockdowns? No. Turkey Al Sheikh is just being whimsical, using his money and political influence in order to get the fights that he wants at the cost of our entertainment. You know, I'm a big Turkey Al Sheikh fan. But if Turkey continues on with this, guys, we're going to have a very hard time making sense of the sport. Because we better hope that Turkey does the right thing from now on. Because if not, we're just going to get whatever Turkey wants to see. So far, in my opinion, Turkey has provided the fights that we all want to see. Why? Because, well, I've called him the biggest fanboy in the world, the biggest casual boxing fan. The guy who gets so excited at the big fights, he only wants big fights to happen, right? But in trying to dictate the careers of these two fighters, he's really making light of the severity of the sport. El Pachuco states so. Fights on Friday, Ryan Garcia. Canelo on Saturday and Top Rank on Monday. Yeah. Whoa, that's crazy. Right now it's 8:19 a.m. in Saudi Arabia. Canelo's going to fight at 10 a.m. Saudi time, so it could be 9:10 p.m. USA time. Are you sure, Eddie? Because here's the thing, man. Saudi does not cater to the U.S. time. Like, that's not the way they do things. Saudi Arabia, their fights take place at nighttime for them. It just looks like daytime for us because it's nighttime for them. They're not going to cater to the U.S. That'd be contrary to Turki Sheikh's job, which is to entertain his people. Why would he want to present a show where prime time is taking place in the U.S. and their people have to be awake at 8 o'clock to travel through the desert to make it to a venue at 10 in the morning to watch the best fight in the world? It doesn't make sense. I don't know. We'll do a little more research then, but I don't think you're right on that one. Pachuco states email championships have diluted boxing severely. So has the regular Reggie belt. It really has. It really has. And this is the reason why I think I'm a little excited about that TKO promotion, that Dana White thing. I know it's very controversial, especially for the fighters. They're not getting paid the best, but they're getting paid well, right? But it's going to be easier for the more casual, less involved boxing fan, the type of boxing fan that does not follow all the boxing news 24/7 or all these channels, the guys that just want to see a good fight and get acquainted with names. Those guys are going to fall in love with an organization like the TKO, right? Because they're going to see these fighters time and time and time again, because it's going to be a close unit of pugilists that are going to be eliminating themselves over a span of months. And I mean, let's admit it, Dana White knows how to do that very, very well. He knows how to keep in fighting very exciting, and he makes their fighters, you know, household names. So, and he's growing that sport of UFC MMA tremendously, right? So he has pay-per-views every 2 weeks. They sell in the millions every single time. So he's doing something right. Um, but and I think the greater thing that they're doing is, of course, just having one belt per weight. And Dana White does not care about working with the WBA, WBC, WBO, and the IBF. In fact, he said himself, I don't care. They can do their own thing. We're probably going to be violating the Muhammad Ali Act. He actually said that. We're probably going to be violating the Muhammad Ali Act because we're keeping it all in house. I'm going to be the promoter, probably the manager, and I'm going to be matchmaking. A complete violation of Muhammad Ali Act. But he don't care, right? He's going to keep it simple. Admitted says we just need a TKO belt at this time to place order. Yep. Email champs were unheard of in the past. Yeah, they were unheard of. But nowadays at Pachuco it's like these promotions, they're so close in cahoots and friendly with these organizations. It's almost like the organizations are lazy. They would rather just hand the belt that to actually make a fight happen. To go with the negotiations, go through with those things, open bidding, what network is going to take place. They're just saying, you know what, this will keep it easy. You take this guy, I'll give you this belt. This guy goes over here, he gets this belt, and they just skip the line. I don't remember in any other generation when boxing was such a cheap sport that anybody could become a champion just with a vacancy. No, I've never heard of that. Like ridiculous. Is Benavides going to record a WBC belt unboxing video and then load it to YouTube? Only if he wants to make good content, right? I mean, why not, right? Like he's gonna have a belt. Well, I don't know, because they're gonna email them the belt. I don't know how that happens. I think it's an email notification, and then eventually they're gonna coronate them in person. But yeah, they'll definitely make a video of that. Okay, it's Benavides will lose it on the scale. It's okay, Benavides will lose it on the scale. Yeah, or he might snort some coke and then get caught for it and lose it that way. As a Vitruvian fan, I just want him to get his slick back. Yeah, I do too, Arimeri, but he didn't have to, right? Vitruviev should have been the best fighter in the world, deemed as such, undisputed, and then people should have got kicked down the ranks. And then people should have climbed up the ranks before getting an immediate rematch, right? That immediate rematch should never have happened, right? Better Viv should have fought the next guy in line. There should never have been any licks. In fact, the one who should have gotten this lick back should have been Bivol after climbing up the ranks, right? But here we are, right? At Pachuco, I agree with you, Warp Speed. I wasn't even really interested in the second Beterbiev versus Bivol fight. Yeah, I look. Okay, those fights were very competitive, guys. They really were. They were close. Both of them are very good operators, right? Very good fighters in their own respect. But they fought one time, guys. It doesn't need no more than one time to determine who the best fighter is at that given moment. And that's the problem, right? We're focusing on the part of that given moment. Yes, we do know that sport is the sport of a puncher's chance. Anybody, any geek off the street can come and knock out Canelo with a lucky punch. That's the reality of the sport, guys. Is it likely to happen? No. But it's happened. That's why we have massive underdogs, right? That's why we have Rafael Divino Espinosa beating Robeisy Ramirez, right? That's why we have Andy Ruiz knocking the block off of Anthony Joshua, right? Because any geek off the street can become a champ. But this is why when those fights take place, there's supposed to be just one champion. Because whatever happens, the guy that took the belt that night overcame all odds, the puncher's chance, the rank climbing, the opportunity of the other individual, the negotiations, the weight cut, all of that to have his arms raised at the end. In my opinion, no matter how many times Beterbiev beats the, Bivol beats Beterbiev, there's only one undisputed champion at 175. The best fighter in the world was that guy. And especially now, in light of the fact that Beterbiev is now 40 or so years of age and only going to get older, even more so, it doesn't matter how many times Bivol beats him, right? Especially the second fight, how he beat him. Like, he was so, again, maybe he threw more punches, but he was again on the back foot. Like, countering the old man with the bad knees and the, hurt wrists and elbows. I mean, look. The old man beat the younger fighter, the best fighter in the world. Bivol should have been dropped in rank. The next guy over, Bostick or whoever you want should have fought in better beef for the belt. But whatever, guys. I mean, it happened, right? That was in the 4-fight class. Fights Prime Time USA. Trilogy should be action packed. Barrera versus Morales, Marquez versus Vasquez, Marcus versus Pacquiao and others. But even those fights, El Pachuco, those fights, especially any of the Marcus brothers, those fights didn't happen consecutively. I think maybe Marcus versus Vasquez, two of those fights did take place back to back, but they were deemed draws, if I'm not mistaken. I think one of those was a draw or something like that, and maybe that's the reason why they had an immediate rematch. And at the end of the day, those guys weren't champions when they fought, if I'm not mistaken. So there's no problem with non-champions and draws leading to immediate rematch clauses, right? I have a problem when there are immediate rematch clauses as contingent for contracts and fights to be made, right? Because they hold up the belts. Marcus and Pacquiao, the 4 fights that took place, they took place in the span of about 4 years, guys, maybe even longer than that. So they're not immediate rematch clauses. They fight, and then one guy drops in rank. He picks himself up again, fights another guy, climbs himself up, has another chance, and they go at it again. That's the way it should be. I don't care if they rematch. I just don't care about immediate rematch clauses as a way to negotiate and to hold up belts and rob other men of the opportunity at greatness, right? And these guys, that's exactly what they're doing because of Turkey Sheik's money. Mr. Vince Vargas is still here listening and playing Xbox. Yeah. Well, I'm a big, I have an Xbox, right? Not the, what is it? The Xbox, I don't think it's the newest one, but it's the one right before this new one, which is now like 5 years old. And, but it's the powerhouse one. Like it's like the big black one that's way powerful, and it also has the computing power of the new one. I love the Xbox. The games are cheap, but I'm a big Nintendo Switch fan, and in fact, I am very disappointed in the tariffs that President Donald J. Trump is imposing on countries, including Japan, which I think he just rescinded as of today or put him on suspension for 90 days, because they're affecting the price of these Japanese imports, right? I mean, I wanted to get the Switch 2 as soon as it hit. The pre-orders were supposed to be today, guys. I'm not too sure if you know this. The Switch 2, the the new generation precursor to the Switch One, which is the Switch One, the most sold gaming system, gaming console of all time, if I'm not mistaken. The Switch 2, a big fan of which I am, has officially been replaced with pre-orders that took place today for a June or July date delivery. But Japan decided that they're gonna postpone the launch of the Switch here in the United States because of the tariffs. So if you know anything about the Xbox, Vince, yeah, it's a great system. It has the most games, right? The PlayStation has the most exclusives for the most part, but the Switch is the funnest system, man. I love my Switch. And Pachuco says, "Yeah, man, they don't even try to hide the corruption. They don't hide the corruption. I mean, it's and nobody's gonna say anything at Pachuco. The fighters are not gonna say anything. The promoters are not gonna say anything. Why? Because Turkey Ali Sheik's money is infinitesimal. It's abundant. It'll never run out. They want a piece of that pie. So that's the thing about corruption, right? It corrupts everybody. Anybody that has anything to do in proximity with corruption will get corrupted in one way or another, right? It's hard to be wholesome and licit when corruption is the way of the world, right? I thought Beterbiev won that first fight clearly. Yeah, I agree with you. I was absolutely happy, right? That he dominated in the way he did, having the younger fighter basically on the back foot circling around, right? And then you looked at his face and he looked all shot up. Yeah. Eddie Medi says, I want to see Crawford versus Petervia. What for? Like, why? Like, I don't get it. Why? Come on. I want to see Crawford versus Petervia. But Hugo says, good points about the difference in rematch types. Yeah, well, look, you know I'm a hardliner at rematches. The rematch should only take place in the automatic, uh, immediate rematch clause, and only if people want to have it. The immediate rematch clause should take place in draws only, and that, of course, includes for the championship fights. If there is a championship fight, especially of the unification type, that leads to a rematch, it'll be because it ended in a draw, right? Or if there's a rematch, it'll be like you know, Boba said Vasquez versus Marcus when they were non-champions, and they were very good, exciting fights. I think it may have ended in draws, maybe not, but they were very controversial and they were very fan friendly, and it made the most money for them. If it benefits the fans and it benefits the fighters, and there's no belts on the line, let them go at it. Who cares? I mean, Mickey Ward, Arturo Gatti, I think they had immediate rematches, at least in two of their fights, right? But none of them were belt holders. I think both of them were coming off of losses, and 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 when they fought, they weren't holding belts, and they put up great fights. They were gonna fight for the belt anyway. The rematch offered the most money and the most familiarity, right? Because they knew each other. So it's like, again, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Even though they were hellacious fights, Ward would prefer to fight Arturo Gatti than the next guy in line because he already knows what to expect, right? So yeah, so I guess I just wanted to vent, right? Because I feel bad overall about everybody, right? I mean, look, here we have. I don't want to be smirch. Bivol. But here we have a fighter that's pretty good, actually, who's been stripped of a belt from an organization who was not next in line, who had no power to strip him for a belt. And why did they strip him? Just because Mauricio Suleiman has connections with the PBC. That's it. That's it. So the PBC is corruptible that way. The PBC corrupts. Mauricio Suleiman and the WBC are corruptible. But you can't also blame David Benavides because, again, he didn't whine and complain about not being handed a belt for free. No, they just gave it to him. What is he going to say? No, I don't want it. I'd rather fight for it. No. Why? Anybody will take the easy route, right? Anybody will take shortcuts whenever you can get them, right? Life is hard. The sport of boxing is hard, hard, very hard. You'll take anything to make your life easier in the sport. That's why people, you know, weight cut and use their physical advantages, go to these very incredible, make these incredible weights in order to have physical advantages because this is a very tough, dangerous sport. Any advantage you'll take it, right? So David Benavides has an opportunity to become a champion on the cheap without fighting for it. He'll take it. And he knows that being a belt holder will pay him the most money. He'll take that also. But is it ideal for him? No, because we're complaining about it. Is it ideal for us? No, because we should have seen David Benavides fighting the next guy in line. Maybe Callum Smith, maybe Vostik, whoever, right? Everybody's a loser in this one. Look at Beterbiev. Beterbiev, even if he beats people, he won't be considered undisputed again. Everybody loses on this one, guys. It's really bad all around. And Pachuco states one question: is Benavides versus Bivol a better fight than Beterbiev versus Bivol 3? Probably, but I think Bivol scores Benavides. But I get it. People want to see how Benavides performs when he steps up, and that's, I think that's look at Pachuco. I think you're absolutely right. Right. The question really is Benavides and Bivol a better fight than Beterbiev and Bivol 3? We don't know because we're not being promised Benavides versus Bivol. The only way to know if that fight would be a better fight would be if they allowed it. I think it would be because we've already, just because of again, just because it's gonna be fresh and new. That's why I think it's a better fight, right? Just because of that. I don't think David Benavides is necessarily a better fighter than Beterbiev. I don't think David Benavides presents as many complications to Bivol as Arthur would. But then again, maybe he would, right? Because people already figured out how to beat the older man, which is just counter him, circle out. And because Beterbiev is now getting older, he's not investing to the body he's headhunting, then all of a sudden, you're able to get away from his barrage of punches because Beterbiev is no longer cutting off the ring well because he's no longer investing to the body, right? So now Bivol, he knows how to beat Beterbiev. So that means it could be less competitive. And the other thing about Benavides is this: maybe Benavides doesn't have power that translates to the higher levels, but he already has experience sparring Bivol. And regardless of what rumors you've heard, Benavides has dropped Bivol to a kidney shot, or Bivol knocked down Benavides with a simple jab, according to one of his trainers, whatever you want to believe. They know each other. There is no reason for these guys to be afraid of each other. I don't think Benavides is afraid of Bivol. I don't think Bivol is afraid of Benavides. And because they know each other, it would make for a very good fight, I think. And maybe Bivol does score Benavides. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, here's the thing: Bivol has scored the Mexican champions before, right? He scored a catch and shoot, bob and weave, great lower body movement, Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan. He's also beaten a southpaw fighter, a very complicated fighter with great physical dimensions that are better than Bivol and Zurdo Ramirez, Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. He's able to beat those kind of guys. Why wouldn't he be able to beat a David Benavides who comes forward like Frankenstein and just throws punches and bunches? He should be able to. But, I mean, Caleb Plant should have been able to beat Benavides, right? I don't know. That's the reason why I'm a little disappointed because we have to see David perform. We have to see whether or not he's worthy of 175. Yeah. You know, there's been so many things going on in the sport, guys. This past weekend, we saw Richard Ramirez, Abdullah Mason, Steven Navarro, Alberto Chop Chop Ramirez. We saw Top Break present to us the future prospects, and I think they all looked great. In fact, I think Abdullah Mason looked good, right? But he also fought the lesser competition than the other guys. If you saw the Alberto Chop Chop fight, he was in a tough fight, guys. He really was. He fought another guy that had no respect for him, right? It was a very, very good fight. But the one who stood out, in my opinion, was Steven Navarro. Steven Navarro, he fought this kid. Can't remember what his name was, but the guy had more experience and he was a little older, and he was very, very good. And he gave Steven Navarro some trouble in the first round. It was a very good first round. The second round, very good round. By the third round, Steven Navarro is already figuring out his opponent. His opponent's still there. His opponent's still crafty, but the opponent is now having trouble with the relentless come forward pressure of Steven Navarro. By the fourth round, he's becoming overwhelmed. By the fifth round, he's already beating him up and he stops him, if I'm not mistaken. Steven Navarro, a guy who I've nicknamed Lomex Shenko because of a very similar unorthodox style. He he won the night for me. I think he stood out. His level of competition is was better than the other guys. Chop Chop actually fought a guy that lost to Shushu Carrington. And that guy was very crafty, very, very good. You can tell that he learned a lot from fighting Shushu. And it showed. Chop Chop he wasn't catching and shooting as much. He had to be a little more offensive, trying to figure out this one guy that was a little more mobile, always on the back foot, right? That showed a little bit of the shortcomings of Chop Chop because he wasn't able to cut off the ring very well or stop him. But guess who was able to cut off the ring and stop his opponent? Steven Navarro. Steven Navarro, man, that guy is the guy to watch, guys. If you guys have not seen the fight with Steven Navarro, Lomachenko, I realized that when talking to homie Ricky, I realized that Steven Navarro does not so much resemble Lomachenko as much as Bam Bam Rodriguez. Very similar. Both southpaws, both the stick, standard ground, stick and punish. They catch and shoot, they find angles, and they plant their feet well for dynamic power transfer. It was incredible. I really encourage you guys to watch it. I may be wrong. May now think that Steven Navarro is more Bam Bam Rodriguez than he is Lomachenko, but still, that only just means that he doesn't move as much. He doesn't do the double step. He's just more powerful, right? But I was very, very impressed, guys. And in case you guys don't know, there's going to be so many incredible fights coming up, guys. I think WrestleMania is this weekend or something. There's so much going on, guys. We really should gather together and talk about these things. But right now, I just wanted to, go live for a little bit. None of my co-hosts were able to make it, and I don't like to opine so much. But I think we have so many losers with the WBC coronating David Benavides. The WBC has lost credibility and cheapened their belt. David Benavides has become a champion and cheap, and a lot of people are griping about it. Bivol has been stripped of a belt, which I agree that he should if he was going to continue to have these immediate rematch clauses. But now he's being considered a duck for not fighting as mandatory on David Benavides, which I don't even understand how he got that position. Bivol is being screwed. Bivol is screwing over Beterbiev because Beterbiev, even if he beats Bivol, he will not be considered undisputed again. And Turkey Ali Sheikh has instigated all of these shenanigans. Wow. So, so bad. So bad. Man, Pachuco says Navarro looks like a future great boxer. I agree. I agree. You know what? I was so impressed, Pachuco, that Navarro, because the guy who he was fighting, he was very crafty. You can tell that that guy was prepared to fight a southpaw. He had a great jab, great power. He had great reflexes. He actually hurt Steven Navarro. He hurt Steven Navarro, and Steven Navarro got stopped in his tracks. He had to take 2 steps back, and he got pushed to the rope. But it was incredible because no less than 20, 30 seconds later, Steven Navarro recovered. He was back and putting the pressure on this guy. It was, man, it was great, right? Now, compare that to another very standout prospect, which some people are really calling a contender now, Abdullah Mason. A very incredible young fighter. Both of them are 21 years of age. In fact, Abdullah Mason became 21 that weekend, if I'm not mistaken, or Stephen Navarro did. I'm an old man. I have a bad memory. But Abdullah Mason had a fight with a fighter that knocked him down twice in the first round. And I mean, he was shook, and he recovered and he picked himself up and he came back to win, right? Outstanding. But it shows the level of learning between Stephen Navarro and Abdullah Mason. Stephen Navarro did not get knocked down, and he was able to recover and figure out his opponent before it became problematic for him again. In the case of Abdullah Mason got dropped twice by the same punch. Is Abdullah Mason Chini? Well, only time will tell, right? Raise the level of competition. Maybe give him a fighter that's taller than him. We'll see what happens, right? But in the case of Steven Navarro, he's looking exceptionally well at 112 pounds. And man, like the kind of moves that this guy is making at that weight division, he better slow his roll because at that, with that kind of fanfare that he's creating, a lot of fighters that have more experience than him, that are champions or contenders, they might be knocking on his door asking him for a fight now that he's young and hasn't really climbed up the ranks to beat him while they can. Because he's only going to get better. He's only going to get more experience. He's going to get tested with greater competition. I'm sure that he's going to overcome it. And when he has that kind of experience, guys, I'm not too sure, but I'm pretty positive that he's going to be a champion. If I was to bet on anybody, yep, it would be Abdullah Mason, Steven Navarro. Chop Chop is obviously in contention, but I would say between Navarro and Abdullah Mason is going to be between those two. That I would wager money that they will become champions. I really do think those two guys have what it takes to become champions in their divisions and in greater divisions at some time. Only time will tell, though. Everybody loses on that one, in Pachuco. Absolutely, man. You know, it's bad. It's bad. Something needs to be done. Something needs to be done about the management of this sport, right? I really thought, as a fan of Turkey Ali Sheikh and a person that has investigated his career, his personal life, and his ambitions, I really thought that he'd be a force to be reckoned with in a positive way. But it almost seems like he's acting like a capricious, rich young man, a princeling that wants to get his way at all cost. Everybody be damned. But this ain't the first time. And even before Turkey stepped into the role of the savior of boxing, the gifting of belts and the email era was a thing. So let's not be too harsh on the guy. Let's place blame where blame belongs. In this case, it is the sanctioning bodies, in particular the WBC, especially Mauricio Suleiman. Ladies and gentlemen, I did say that I was going to end this live by talking a little bit about men's health. Now, I don't want you to laugh at me, but I had a very strange occurrence happen to me. Okay, I'm 46 years of age. I've always been healthy, or I think I'm healthy, right? Because I never go to the doctor, because I never have a reason to go to the doctor. I'm athletic. I'm, I have dexterity. I have good hand-eye coordination. I play sports with my children. I go mountain biking. I was a vegetarian for 60 years of my life. I have been imbibed and I have smoked for about three-fourths of my life, but I quit that 5 years ago. So I would say that I'm in optimal health. But then, of course, a pandemic struck and I had to work remotely. And then the park that I frequent for my mountain biking and my hikes, they had a fire and the place burned down and then they closed. And while it was rebuilding and restoring itself, the park was closed for about 2 years. Long story short, I gained a lot of weight. From fit 154, I weighed the most 178, guys. Like 54, 64, 74, like 30 pounds, guys. 30 pounds in 3 years. The pandemic, lack of exercise, all of those things affected me, right? And now, of course, with age, my metabolism has slowed down and it's harder for me to shed the weight. Now, something very strange happened to me the other day. And for this part of the conversation, I'm going to go to a more private area because these things, young children like these guys right here, should not be listening to. So here I am, right? And I've always been a very fit and athletic individual. And I'm very much in love with my wife. I'm very much attracted to her. And as as men and women do, we make love. This is gonna be a little weird, guys, but hey, I'm just gonna say something. This is a warning for you guys, right? To make sure you do your push-ups, burpees, sit-ups, exercise, eat well, and mostly take care of your health because you do not want to take drugs to promote better health. Right now, I'm suffering from allergies. Today was a great day. I have now developed a system to make sure that I am not impacted by allergies. But for the past 2 weeks, because of spring and whatnot. We have a lot of flowers and plants pollinating and all these dust and allergens flying around. And of course, a few years back, I started developing allergies, seasonal allergies. My eyes become ruddy, phlegm backed up, sneezing, coughing, ridiculous, ugly, ugly. It's bad, guys. Like in public places, here I am just chucking loogies. I carry rolls of toilet paper so I can blow my nose everywhere, right? I'm gonna go on and live my life. I try not to be gross, but that's what it is. Sometimes it looks like that, but I don't care. It's my health. I mean, what are you gonna do? And then we have the sniffles, and then of course we have the sneezes. And when you get those allergies, guys, maybe it's like 5 or 6 sneezes in a row, and every single time you sneeze with that kind of power, it's almost like doing some crunches because your chest contracts, your muscles in your gut tense. And basically, if you cough enough and you sneeze enough, you'll start seeing your six pack, right? And I still have a nice physique. I still have my six pack a bit rounded, more so now than it was a few years ago. But you're probably saying, get to the point. All right, let's get to the point. In order to control my allergic reactions, my histamines, I have started to take some pills called Benadryl. And Benadryl are very common and cheap pills. They're pink. They make you very drowsy. And the reason they work is because they shut down your body, right? They shut down your body. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how else to describe it. Everything shuts down your histamines, your immune system, everything just relaxes. So it doesn't overreact because allergies are basically an overreaction, right? Your body's trying to fend off a foreign object, a foreign organism that has entered into your airways through your nose, through your mouth, and then it's going to cause that reaction, a cough, a sneeze, whatever. And when you take a Benadryl or any type of allergy pill, you're basically telling your body, I don't want you to overreact. I want you to stay put and tolerate these things that are triggering allergies, the things that are causing that tickle in your throat, the thing that is causing the itch in your nose, right? And when you're suffering like that, guys, you take a pill because you can't take it anymore. So I take these pills, these little pink pills, and they're very powerful, guys. I mean, literally, if you take a pill and you've never taken Benadryl before, I would not recommend you drive or operate any heavy machinery. Make you very drowsy, very sleepy. In fact, I have a very funny story to tell. One of my buddies, a few years ago, when we were still working at the office, he was suffering from allergies, and I had these allergy pills, and he doesn't drink coffee. So he asked me, "Hey, do you have any allergy pills? Do you have those pink pills?" And I go, "Yeah, I got some right here. Uh, you want one? Yeah, sure." I go, "Do you drink coffee?" He's like, "No." I go, "Why not?" He goes, "Because I become very anxious. I become very nervous." I go, "Well, you're gonna have to drink coffee because if you take this, you're gonna become very, very sleepy, incredibly so." Well, he said, "No, I'll take it. I'll take it. Don't worry about it." I gave him the pill. He went on break for 5 hours. He was gone. Basically, he went into his car. He fell asleep, completely just walked into his car to take a break. 15-minute break. 5 hours later, we're all concerned. We don't know where he's at. We're walking by his vehicle. Well, sure enough, he was sleeping in his car. He threw his seat back all the way and he took a 5 hour nap, right? Like he was gone, gone. And he told me never to give him a pill again. So you have to take these pills and their potency into consideration before you decide to sign any forms or make any legal decisions or operate a vehicle or machinery. They're very strong. Now, I started to take these pills and they control my allergies. And the other day, there I was, I'm getting frisky with my wife. And, one thing leads to another, and next thing you know, we're making love. And as we're making love, I know a few positions. I'm not saying that I wrote the book on Kama Sutra, but I mean, I know a couple of moves, right? So there I am making moves and, moving to another position just to prolong our romantic involvement. And I noticed one thing, right? In one of those sessions is that I don't know what else to call it, my ejaculate. The homie Ricky says nobody wants to hear that. Well, you can go on, bro. This is gonna only get nasty, bro, and it's gonna be a little scary too, guys. At least it's scary to me, right? My ejaculate was very, very thick. It was drippy. It was just like thick, like nasty, like yogurt, right? And I was like, "What the hell? What is that?" Right? And now, mind you, my allergy started to come up 2 weeks ago, so I started to take these pills 2 weeks ago. Okay, that was a weird, strange thing. Right. The second thing that happened is that as we were, moving from one position or another, there was maybe like a minute or two of no stimulation as we're getting ready to move to the other thing, right? So that means no movement, no sexual movement. And I started to notice that because I'm like a raging bull, right? The thing started to move downwards. And I'm like, what the? My thing's supposed to be touching my belly button, right? Like, why is it moving down just because we stop for a minute or two? Okay, we go back and we start kissing him. We start making love, and there it is again, hardened. But I was concerned about that. I was like, why is this looking like this? And why is this doing this? So I started to investigate more on Benadryl. And I've discovered, guys, the Benadryl does not promote virility. Benadryl can compromise your sexual abilities. Benadryl makes your ejaculate very thick. Do you understand what I'm telling you guys? I'm telling you guys, if you take Benadryl, the side effects for a man are very bad, guys. So, what I started to do is I started to develop a system to make sure that I don't have allergies. How did I do that? I sleep more, I sleep longer, right? Because the less you sleep, the more weakened your immune system is. So I fortify my immune system through sleep. I added 2 more hours of sleep. I also started taking vitamins. This immune system enhancer by the name of emergency. It's these little powders. You mix them with water and they become like juice. They're called emergent and with the letter C, emergency. And as a result of my drinking emergency and going to sleep, today I had an excellent day with allergies. I didn't take the pill. Yesterday, the same thing. And what's the point of the story? If you don't take care of your health, guys, if you don't exercise, if you weaken your immune system, if you take drugs, you're or medicine, you're gonna suffer from side effects that will cause you harm to your body, right? And if you're a man like me that likes to pride themselves on their ability to, you know, make their beloved, in this case my wife, feel special by making love, you don't want to have any kind of performance issues. Please exercise, eat well, sleep well. Don't take any pills that affect your body's performance, right? I don't think you're going to hear this kind of conversation anywhere else, guys. This type of honesty and stuff like that, right? But I don't care. I'm here to make sure that my people are in better places than they were before. I am not going to take these pills. I don't want these things to happen to me. I'm gonna lose weight. I'm going back into, you know, eating healthier and taking vitamins if that's what's gonna take. But I'm just confessing these things because I don't want these things to happen to you. Long story short, if you see any pills called Benadryl and they're pink, they're like glow in the dark, guys. Please do yourself a favor. Do not buy them. Invest in better pills, maybe Claritin or something else, something that does not cause those side effects for your own good, right? Do some push ups, do some sit ups, take a hike, lose some weight, drink more water, sleep better. Quite simple. And that was the moral of the story, guys. Take care of yourself. So, there it is, guys. Right? Probably a very embarrassing revelation to most, but you know what? I mean, it happens. you know, it's never happened to me before, so that's why I was very scared. But now that I know what it is, I'm sure gonna do everything possible to not suffer those kind of situations again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun. There's been a lot of things going on in the sport, and we should get together more often to talk about these things. Unfortunately, the homie Ricky didn't want to do it. Dream didn't want to do it either. But it's good that I have people like El Pachuco, Ari Meri, Mr. Vince Vargas to not only keep me company, but to also, of course, discuss the sport and to ask questions that are relevant because that's what we want. Make this sport relevant again. For Warp Speed and everybody out there that enjoys this sport and enjoys life and good health, I hope you are doing well of health, that you stay sane of mind, and I do bid you adieu.